Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. My first solo episode, and it was so weird to record. I am used to interviewing others and letting them tell their stories and share their expertise. However, I have received a bunch of messages and emails asking to hear my story and how I decided to start a podcast. So here I am on today's episode, sharing a little bit about me, how and why I became a talk therapist, why I decided to become a podcaster, how going live on Facebook opened up a new skill set for me, and why I love my talk therapist peers. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for listening today. Today's episode is going to be a little bit of a shift from my normal type of episodes. It's funny, when I first started podcasting, I told myself I didn't want to do any solo episodes at all. I did not want to be coming on and doing the solo episodes. I only wanted to interview other talk therapists and learn about them, get them in front of my audience. You guys give massive value, but what's happened is as I've released the episodes, I'm getting messages from talk therapists out there. So, hey, thank you so much for reaching out and asking me some questions. It's really an honor to be able to serve you all and asking me, how did I get into this? Where did I come from? Like, what's my story? And so I wanted to share a little bit about who I am, how I got here, and why podcasting. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in South Carolina. I did not mean to become a marriage and family therapist when I started out in my schooling and my education. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I graduated high school in 1991 from Freeman High School, and I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. Actually, I started out at the University of Georgia. What I realized is when I went to college, I wasn't really ready to leave the nest. I was very overwhelmed. It was a huge school. And I don't think I had the skill sets now that I look back to handle all the newness and all the things that I had to make decisions for myself about. And so I ended up transferring back to Richmond, going home to Richmond, and I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. And growing up, I never really had an idea of what I wanted to do. I knew that there were things I was interested in. I was interested in communications. I was interested in talking with people. I was interested in people's stories. I was interested in writing, but I didn't really know how to put that all together. And so when I had to declare a major at Virginia Commonwealth University, my mom was the one who suggested public relations or mass communications. And I thought, okay, I like public. I like to relate. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So I graduated from VCU in 95 with an undergraduate degree in PR. And this was before the internet really took hold. I remember the year I graduated, email was just coming out. It was like the new thing. And I remember being in the computer lab, looking around at all the freshmen saying, I will never use that email. Like, what do you need that for? But I didn't know what I didn't know. And soon enough, I had my first email address. I probably still, it's the same one I use today. I had my first email address, my first job, or my first internship was in sports marketing. And I happened to kind of fall into that. I had some nice connections. I did an internship in a cycling race, really enjoyed the activity, being around all the athletes, learning the ins and outs of event management. And so I eventually, after that internship, moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and took a job with the Goodwill Games, which was a Turner Sports entity. And I went from the Goodwill Games over to World Championship Wrestling in a very bizarre kind of twist. I don't know. I think at the time I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, and I was kind of bouncing around. And my attitude about work really, I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I was just wanted to have a job that would pay the bills and allow me to have fun in Atlanta. I didn't really think too much about career. I didn't think too much about, what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. I just kind of figured it would all happen, figure itself out. And from there, once I was at World Championship Wrestling, I was like, what am I doing with my life? How did I get here? And what do I want to do? I guess just having that experience of being around that profession really had me question, I wanted to do something more meaningful. I realized I wanted to help people. Because at the time I was also getting into health and wellness and fitness, and I was kind of finding my my own self-confidence in the gym by challenging myself with new things. And as I was going through that, that shift, that process, I decided I was going to go back to school and get my master's in public health. And to do that, I moved to Columbia, South Carolina to attend the University of South Carolina. And that was in 1999. And y'all, I've been here ever since. 20 years I've been in Columbia, South Carolina. It really is home now. And then soon after I moved here, I met my future husband, but we were just friends for a while before we started dating. But he is the one that got me into the gym and got me excited about lifting, and really kind of helped me grow not just my physique, but my mindset around challenging myself and taking on new things. And as he and our relationship went on, I promise there's a point to all this, to how I got to be a therapist. So just thanks for hanging out with me so far. So what happened was, all of this stuff in my head about career and what I wanted to do, I just wasn't happy. I had a couple of jobs. I just wasn't happy and fulfilled in what I was doing. And I don't know what that was about. I guess I kept thinking the job was going to fulfill me, or the relationship was going to fulfill me, instead of realizing that it's an internal shift or internal work that I had to do. So after Billy and I dated for about a year, he ended up breaking up with me. And it was the most devastating thing I'd ever experienced. And I've been through my parents divorced when I was 10 or 11. I went through a lot of ick with that. And so I decided to go to counseling to kind of figure out what the heck was going on with me in our relationship. And he told me, this very, very, very true statement. He said to me, "I love you, but I can't be with you because you are not a happy person." And that just jarred me to my core. So I hightailed my butt to counseling, and I just dug deep and started doing my work. And in the process of doing my work, I fell in love with this idea, this process of having this whole hour, 50 minutes, 50 minutes to share about myself, and to have somebody listen to me in a non-judgmental way and ask me hard questions and probe me to think back to when I was younger, and how did, my meaning-making experiences as a child impact me. And then in my current relationship, how was I projecting those out? And what did I want to do with all that? And is that the person that I wanted to become? I mean, looking back, that's how I frame it in my head. And I just loved it so much, I decided to go back to school to become a counselor, take on even more master's degree debt, but it's all been worth it in my mind. And I'm very, very content and happy with the degree that I got from the University of South Carolina. I had some amazing professors, amazing intern experience in the counseling center there. I worked with college students, and I just had an incredible experience. And I would come home from, and by the way, Billy and I ended up getting back together about 8 months after we broke up, because he was very encouraged and engaged. And, he grew too in that process. I'm not saying like he didn't have some things to grow on as well. But we got back together, and here we are. We've been married 13 years, and we have 2 children. And, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And I think I wanted to share, if you guys are listening and you were wondering what it's like to be a talk therapist, we're not perfect. We are not perfect people. We have our own stuff. We have our own baggage. The thing that you want to remember, and I hope if you are looking for a therapist, or maybe you're thinking about being a talk therapist, like, it's so important to recognize that you have your stuff, and that you're not perfect, and that we're humans, and that we go through our own stuff. But it's, what do we do with our own stuff that impacts us, our families, even our clients? Because believe it or not, if we don't pay attention to what's going on internally, we somehow, if we're not like working on our own stuff or being aware of our own stuff, there's that scary feeling of projecting it into the counseling session. And so you have to be very aware of your own stuff as a therapist. And you have to, and I still do I haven't done it in a while, but I still do peer supervision all the time. And I want my peers to kind of point things out to me and say, "Hey, could this be your own reaction? What's that about?" And I love that about peer supervision and peer consultation groups. I mean, I think every therapist should have one. And I also think if you need supervision for an issue that you're not the most familiar with, then go and get supervision for an issue that you're working with. I think that's so important. We have to remember that we can't know everything, and we aren't experts on everything that walks into our office. So we just want to kind of put that disclaimer out there. This episode of The Therapy Show is sponsored by my favorite fitness apparel, Zaya Active. I recently discovered Zaya Active when I went looking for high quality and premium workout clothes. Just like those luxury store and catalog brands, yet I wanted a budget-friendlier price tag. I love this brand because number one, I live a very active lifestyle. I hit the gym about 5 days a week. Plus, I love to go for runs and long walks, which I consider to be my very important self-care and podcast listening time. Plus, the endorphins I get from my workouts keep me in my happy mental space. The clothes stay put. I'm not constantly pulling on my leggings or tugging on my sports bras, and they accentuate me in all the right places. And number two, when I work from home, I love to be comfortable in leggings, also known as yoga pants, and a tank top. Plus, I can transition to running out the door to pick up our girls or run errands while still looking put together in my athleisure styles. My favorite workout leggings are the light and tights, and my favorite everyday wear are the everywhere pants. I literally wear them everywhere, every day. I can even wear them to business meetings or client consultations. I can dress them up or down easily. Want to learn more? Head over to lisamustard.com and click on the activewear page. You can learn all about Zaya Active, the mission, the clothes, and see if they are a fit for you and your active life. From weight training to running to Zumba to yoga to CrossFit to bar to walking to tennis, Zaya Active has you covered. And don't forget about the active men in your life. They have an amazing men's line, plus clothes for active kids too. That's Zaya like papaya active. So see my site for all the details. So yeah, that's how I became a marriage and family therapist. And also, you guys, it's really also, I think, interesting to know that I grew up in a family where my parents got divorced when I was young, and my relationship with my father isn't like the best. And I say that in a place, well, I'm 45 years old now, and I can look back and take responsibility for my stuff. And, I have to bless and release him and let him live his life how he's going to live it. Have I forgotten the stuff that I went through? Not necessarily, but I have forgiven it because I'm an adult and I take responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, and actions. So I grew up in a family where there was a lot of chaos. And looking back, probably a little bit of some type of trauma, not like trauma that caused like PTSD. And, I have to remember that my trauma is my trauma. And I get into that comparison game because I work with the military and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't experience deployment. I didn't experience war. So how can I call my trauma trauma? But we have to remember our trauma is relative to our lives and our life experiences. So when I look back and I think that's why I react so strongly to certain triggers in my life, it's really important that you pay attention to all of those things because as therapists, it's vital. It's so vital. It makes us better clinicians. It makes us better humans. I'm just convinced of that. So fast forward, I became a marriage and family therapist, and I had some amazing, mentors and guidance along the way. When I came out of grad school, I first worked for the South Carolina Counseling Center. I worked there for a little bit on a suicide prevention grant. Then I went and worked for an addiction recovery program. I was a family therapist there for just a little bit. And then I feel like my true calling found me, or I found it, I'm not sure, but working with the military, I've been with the military branch for 9 years, and it has been the most humbling and amazing work I could ever do. And I think back to the soldiers and the families that I've worked with and helped over the years, and I am just humbled by what they have gone through and what they've experienced. So please know that's a lot of where I honed my marriage and family therapy skills was around reintegration issues with soldiers and their families, as well as coping with deployment, the aftermath of deployment, and just like the life cycle of soldiers being in the military. I've kind of, since I've been there 9 years, I've kind of seen a lot of soldiers kind of cycle through that. And I'm always humbled by the soldiers' willingness to share intimate details of what they have experienced. And I have to always give them, publicly to folks out there in the world that it's not easy for soldiers to share their vulnerability because they're taught in the military that there's weakness in being vulnerable, weakness from the enemy. So when they come back from deployment or they're back in the civilian world, it's hard for them to understand sometimes. And this isn't for every soldier by any means. I'm not saying this is like across the board, but it's hard for them to understand that sometimes being vulnerable is where they need to go. And especially if they're having marriage issues or job issues or, like reintegration issues, sometimes being vulnerable is the ticket to finding the change or doing things different. So that's just my little plug for working for the military. So I've been with a military branch now for 9 years. Haven't done a whole lot of marriage therapy probably in the past couple years. I focus more so on crisis intervention, referring, assessing and referring, brief solution focused therapy in the work that I do now. And I was also a provider on a online platform for about 9-10 months. I really enjoyed that. Now, there's always going to be pros and cons for therapists out there, trying to decide if they should join one of these online platforms. But I think you have to, if you're curious about it, then you should explore it and decide for yourself if it's something that you want to do. I think that's most important. You can't listen to all your peers because one peer has a bad experience or a great experience. Your individual experience is going to be, of course, yours. But I really enjoyed that. And the reason I've cut back on that is so I can focus on the podcast. Okay, so you've hung out with me this long. Thank you so much. So the podcast came about in a really roundabout way. If you are following me on Facebook, you may know that I like to go live and talk about all kinds of topics. One of my topics I like to talk about is personal branding, social media, and from doing that, plus having to get up in front of hundreds and hundreds of soldiers and families and do presentations, I've honed my skills on presenting. I've honed my skills on how to keep an audience engaged. I hope I'm keeping you guys engaged on the podcast. This is very new for me. Getting up in front and presenting to an audience is very different than going live. Podcasting is all audio. I do this on Zoom, so I do keep the video, and I might put that up one day so you'll see me. But this is a different medium, a different way to connect and to communicate. And so after those experiences of going live and doing the presentations, I thought I want to try podcasting, but I want to do podcasting for talk therapists. I want to create a virtual space for therapists to come, kick off their shoes, pour a cup of coffee or beer, and listen in and feel like they're hanging out with their peers. That is my intention and my hope for this podcast, and for you to learn maybe something new, all types of topics. But I didn't want to be the expert. I didn't want to be the one every episode coming on, researching, presenting. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to showcase other therapists out there that are doing some really cool things. And so that's how this idea was born. And it was born back in, November or December of 2018, when a friend of mine who reached out to me, and she may not know this, but she is a speech therapist, and she does a podcast, and she reached out to me and she said, I love what you're doing on Facebook with your lives. I really would like to have you on and do a podcast on like social media for health professionals, for, speech therapists. And I said, oh, that'd be great. I would love to do it. Well, that never happened. And that's okay. I know she gets busy. Maybe she changed her mind. I'm fine with that. But in the meantime, it just got my wheels spinning. And I went and I listened to a bunch of her podcasts, and I just loved how she made it feel like I was hanging out with a colleague, and we were hanging out and having coffee. And I thought, I love how she's created this space, this community. And I just kind of let that simmer in the back of my mind. And then over Christmas, my mother-in-law, who is a retired elementary school teacher, she bought a book called What Do You Do with an Idea? And we were driving down to Edisto Beach for Christmas, and she pulled the book out to read to my girls. And I think I was driving. Was I driving? I was driving the car, and I was just listening to her read this book, and I was mesmerized. And I was like, Kathy, you are such a great storyteller. And she's like, well, I taught elementary school for 30 years. And I was like, it's so awesome. I love how you tell a story. And so that kind of stayed with me. And then the idea, the message behind the book is, what do you do with an idea? And I had this idea of podcasting, and I just kind of like simmered on it over Christmas break. And I was out for a run one morning, and I came back and I told Billy, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast for talk therapists, and I'm going to do, this is my idea. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to give back. This is how I want to serve. This is how I want to be relevant to the talk therapy community. And I started to kind of look around, and from what I can tell, and please tell me if I'm wrong, I love to know about other podcasts. I didn't see another podcast like this where it was a therapist interviewing other therapists about the work that they're doing. And I also wasn't sure if there was a way that I could take these podcasts and turn them into CEUs. So I got really curious about that as well. So as I record this episode is going to come out probably months after I've started. And as you're listening to this, please know I'm in the process of taking some of the podcasts and submitting them for CEUs to get credentialed. So if you like the podcast and you go, hey, Lisa, that was good information, I learned something, you can go to the website. you can purchase the pod course and you can take the quiz, give the evaluation, and then you'll get a certificate of completion with 1 hour of credit. Now, the hard part is every state is different. As you guys know, I don't know where you're listening from, but every state is different. And so I have to look at each state and then each national organization, and I have to follow their guidelines as to getting everything submitted. So that's my own anxiety, my own worry. Like, can I get this done? Is this something that's going to happen? But I want to be transparent with you all and let you know that is the goal. I'm hoping by the time you hear this podcast, 1 or 2 of them have been approved, and you can go back and get a CEU for maybe 1 or 2 of the podcasts. So that's where this is going. This is how it all started. I would love to answer any of your questions. I will come back and do more solo episodes if you guys want. Please just let me know what you want to learn about. Maybe you want to learn about social media. Maybe you want to learn about personal branding. I'm a Facebook gal through and through. That is where I hang out. I'm on Instagram as well. I like Facebook because, first of all, you can have a group on Facebook. And Facebook, it's easier for me to talk to people on Facebook. And it's a desktop feature where I can easily scroll around and get to where I want to go. So that's where you're probably going to find me the most. But I know that there's plenty of places to hang out on social media. And if you want to learn more about a certain social media, please let me know. I can find an expert to come on and talk to you about that. If you want to learn more about creating a course, I'm going to be doing more episodes with more people who have done those things, because I know a lot of y'all out there are curious about additional streams of revenue, because maybe you're tired of trading an hour for a fee, or you can't raise your rates because, well, you just can't, because they're as high as they can go, but you desire to make more income. And that is something else that I find fascinating, is that we therapists, not everybody, but some that I talk to, feel bad about wanting to make money, which I find fascinating. I find that so fascinating. So I think there's a lot of money issues in the minds of therapists. Most of us get into this work because we want to help people. We aren't thinking so much about making money when we get going, because we have that innate desire to help people. We want to help. We care. And just because we care doesn't mean that we can't make money. Okay. So I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a podcast on that as well. But in the meantime, let me know what you want to learn about. Thanks so much for being here, you guys. I'm really excited about this community that we're creating. I'm listening to you, and I want to give you what you want. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And just feel free to reach out to me on the website, lisamustard.com, or send me an email, hello@lisamustard.com. Or you can even message me on Instagram or through my Facebook pages, The Therapy Show at Lisa Mustard. All right, y'all, take good care, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to The Therapy Show. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the podcast. Thank you.